Little for me. Cherishing single mothers. Throughout the United States, there are more single parent households than ever before in the nation's history. Yet, Black women remain the one group of single parents who are consistently attacked, assailed on all sides by a white supremacist culture that stereotypes Black females as welfare queens, by Black men who claim they are the victims of these castrating breeders who would rather live off welfare than have a good man support them, and by the shaming judgment of a nation that castigates unmarried poor women who birth children, while idolizing unmarried rich and famous women who choose to parent. Single Black mothers are increasingly represented in the mass media as harsh, uncaring parents. A large group of Black single mothers parent alone because they are divorced. They are working mothers. Like their non Black counterparts who receive state aid, most of them would relish being economically supported by a caring male provider. It's a myth that Black women prefer to raise children alone. Even most single professional women living alone who choose to adopt a child would prefer sharing parenting with a caring partner. Parenting alone is difficult work. No one knows this better than Black women, and is even more difficult when women are poor. Barbara O'Malley's The Rising Song of African American Women includes one of the most insightful discussions about being Black single mothers ever written. In a chapter titled It's a Family Affair, throughout this essay, she draws together facts and figures to counter negative stereotypes about Black single mothers. O'Malley writes, most Black single mothers are the working poor. We do domestic work, sew in factories, and are self employed as merchants and caterers. We commute daily to city, state, and federal government agencies. As paralegals, aides, and clerks, we are the backbone of the hospital, childcare, and nursing home systems. Although the wages are low and the work tedious, Black women stay with city jobs for years because they offer stability and benefits. More often than not, when the topic is Black single mothers, the image evoked is one of a Black woman on welfare. Working Black single mothers tend to be ignored in the society unless they can be evoked as a means of pathologizing Black family life. For a long time, working Black single mothers were simply ignored. When the white supremacist patriarchal mass media wanted to paint a portrait of pathology, it highlighted Black women receiving welfare. Usually, the spotlight would focus on individual Black women with four or more children by different men who was lying to the system to receive more aid. It has never mattered to the listening public that this image is not representative. However, in recent years, as more concrete statistics about who actually receives aid and how much money recipients are actually given are made public, anyone who is not blinded by biases has to face the extent to which negative images of Black women on welfare are flaunted as a way to scapegoat them and leave unquestioned issues of class, race, and imperialism when it comes to the allocation of funding. I want to place a spotlight on Black single mothers to talk about the concrete practice of love ethic in Black life, because there is so much evidence to document that this group, more than any other, against the odds, has created a space of love within the home. It reflects the extreme nature of our collective crisis that more than ever before in our nation's history, Black people participate in the overall assault on the integrity of Black single mothers. In the popular mass media, Black single mothers are represented as castrating bitches who want to irresponsibly breed children they cannot support. Little distinction is made between working single mothers and women on welfare. They are both unjustly represented as criminals, and the children they parent are represented as would be criminals. Were there any book written documenting contemporary representation of single mothers in our society, the gap between how white women have been represented, a recent portrayal is that of the hardworking single mom in the film As Good as It Gets, and the representation of Black women would be clear. White single mothers tend to be represented positively. They are depicted as hardworking victims of circumstances, not their choosing, or professional women who are at heart loving Madonna figures. Black single mothers are more often than not depicted as neglectful, violent, mentally depraved substance abusers. Currently, the focus on family values, along with efforts to dismantle welfare, has led to violent condemnation of Black single mothers on all fronts. Under the guise of Black family values, Black males have added their voices to the critique of Black single mothers. Underlying the attacks on Black single mothers is the assumption that patriarchal families are the healthiest. Of course, most of the recent work on nuclear families highlights that these families are more often than not dysfunctional. Feminist scholarship on family life calls attention to the extent to which coercive male domination erodes family values. Widespread domestic violence and male perpetuated incest are two indications that the patriarchal nuclear family is not inherently a more positive location to raise children than a single parent household. Many folks choose to believe that the patriarchal nuclear family is best because they imagine it would be a household with a greater income. Masses of women in this country know that male domination often means that men who lead households do not willingly give their money to the support of women and children. In the early part of the 20th century, the temperance movement expressed the extent to which male patriarchal heads of household withheld money from families to support drinking and carousing. Today, men who earn decent incomes often gamble wages away, playing the lottery, or engage in substance abuse or womanizing. When the woman in the home also works, patriarchal men are even more inclined to distribute their funds in such a way as to ensure that the family resources will not expand. He may do this by simply deducting from the household funds once he contributed the amount of money that women have made. In two parent Black families where women make as much money as their mates, if not more, patriarchal men often display various strategies to ensure their control of finances. Studies of patriarchal white families show that when divorce happens, the male heads of households often withhold economic support from women and children. The struggle over household funds can often be such a site of conflict that women of all races and classes simply give in to male demands. These facts can be easily ignored by patriarchal male politicians who want to make it seem as if the presence of men in families means more economic resources and greater emotional stability. Women and children in homes where men withhold their resources know from experience that simply having an adult male present does not mean a better material life or that the household will be carrying a supportive environment. Amazingly, despite the hardships they face, working Black mothers Working Black single mothers unequivocally give the bulk of their resources to caring for the welfare of children. This contribution to the material well being of their children is rarely highlighted. Instead, these mothers must confront sexist stereotypes which deem them castrating matriarchs because they take their parenting role seriously. Yet, it is this high quality of care that makes Black single mothers worthy guides for anyone examining the impact of a love ethic in Black life. The combination of care, knowledge, respect, and responsibility that is the foundation of loving practice is clearly evident in the parenting styles of many Black single mothers. When Black single mothers raise children who become healthy, self loving, productive citizens, no one calls attention to the strategies they have used to create a positive family life that stands as a complement to alternative to the patriarchal model. We would all like to read studies documenting and highlighting their parenting skills, showing us what they did right. Instead, we hear the most about Black single mothers when something has gone wrong in an individual family. While this is even more true if the family receives welfare, the negative fallout impacts on all Black single mothers. Ignoring all evidence to the contrary, a vast majority of Black male leaders have championed the patriarchal family model. Rarely do they talk about what has motivated fathers to absent themselves from families or to fail to contribute economically. Black males who participated in the Million Man March pledged to assume greater responsibility in families, claiming that some patriarchal men consider their rightful place as heads of households. They critiqued welfare, but they simply did not talk about the dangerous implication of patriarchal male rule. Underlying much of the discussion of Black male absence from parenting was an implied critique of Black females. Sexist Black men often suggest that Black men are absent fathers because Black females have not allowed them to assume their rightful roles. Such arguments tend to ignore the reality of black male abandonment and the disregard of families. And it in no way examines the extent to which patriarchal black male heads of households have no better track record than their white counterparts when the issue is providing material and emotional care to families. Were more studies done highlighting the actions, behaviors, and values of patriarchal black males who are heads of households and the impact of their parenting behavior has on children, we might have a more realistic base from which to determine whether their presence truly enhances the well being of children. It should be obvious that all children are likely to be more healthy when raised in a home that is first and foremost loving. Homes where there are loving male and female caregivers undoubtedly offer children a positive environment. Yet none of the discussions about the harmful effects of absent black male fathers has centralized love. Instead, patriarchal thinking implies that simply by being present, black male fathers ensure that black children would have healthy self esteem and self love. This is simply not true. A domineering and or violently abusive father who is present will not be creating a home environment that promotes a child's well being. Men do not make life good for women and children by simply being present. It is how they act and interact that makes the difference. Destructive behavior by present black male fathers makes black family life dangerous and precarious, just as constructive behavior enhances family life. By emphasizing the negative, I do not mean to imply that all black fathers are unkind, cruel, or irresponsible. However, if there were a large mass of loving black fathers eager to assume material responsibility for their children and able to provide emotional nurturance, there would be no need to discuss absent fathers, for there would be no problem. Commitment to co parenting, either when they are present in the home or after the parents break up, would still ensure that Black fathers could play a meaningful role in the lives of their children. Scapegoating single Black mothers has allowed Black men to deflect attention away from the discussion of the meaning of parenting in their lives. We live in a culture where all men have access to practical, affordable, and adequate forms of birth control. No responsible man needs father children he does not want to care for. Until our society stops blaming single mothers, the necessary scholarship that looks at male motives for fathering children that they do not parent will never be undertaken. Concurrently, bashing single mothers does not make the reality that single parent households are becoming more a norm for all groups. These families are usually headed by women. Rather than negatively stereotyping these families as at risk or as pathological, scholars need to highlight single parent female headed households that are loving environments. Significantly, the refusal of our nation to recognize the extraordinary contribution of single mothers who give loving care is tied to the sexist assumption that caregiving is inherently a female trait and not a choice. Yet, the fact that some women are from the onset of childbirth unwilling to nurture or give care exposes the fallacy of this myth. While many fathers choose to turn away and abandon children, mothers faced with the same freedom of choice not only stay but do the work of providing economic and emotional stability in the home. That choice is a valuable contribution to family life in our nation. These families are usually no more unstable than those with benevolent patriarchal males present. Much of the attack on Black single mothers has centered on the issue of parenting Black boys. When the men's movement first began, its leaders insisted that boys could not be taught how to be men by women, that they needed a male presence. These comments were bandied about without any facts to show that male children raised by single mothers suffer some substantive lack that boys raised in two parent households do not. Of course, experiential reality does not support this claim. Many of the men, Black and non Black, who have become important leaders in our society, men of wisdom, integrity, and right action, were raised by single mothers. Granted, there are examples of boys raised by single mothers who do not succeed in life, but we see the same problem in boys who had both male and female parental caregivers present. In the case of my own brother, raised in a God fearing patriarchal home where our mother did not work and our father provided, parental shaming of our brother for being sensitive and gentle, for not being a stellar athlete, was wounding and terribly detrimental to his growth. His temporary fall into irresponsible behavior and addiction was utterly linked to the lack of care by our dad. Until this nation could acknowledge that patriarchal fathers who use coercion and other forms of violence to discipline children do not raise healthy, self loving children, there will be no clear understanding of the value of any male choosing to be a loving parent. Concurrently, when this knowledge is taken into consideration by those who harshly judge single parent households, the value of women's contribution in raising healthy boys can be fully recognized. Clearly, females can raise psychologically whole and healthy boys. Single mothers raising children alone seem to understand better than anyone that it is important for their children to have positive, caring interaction with men. Before the breakdown of neighborhood communalism and the formation of the privatized world of housing projects which isolated poor women and children, there was no black single mother who raised a child without the input of adult male elders and peers. And even in the face of the obstacles privatized housing creates, loving black single mothers make sure that their children have the opportunity to learn from men by interacting with them. They see this as important for both male and female children. Again, it must be stated that single mothers welcome the participation of male parental caregivers. There is no evidence to the contrary. However, there is plenty of evidence that men who are dominating and disruptive, who are violent and abusive, are not welcome in healthy female headed households. Way too many women have internalized guilt about single parenting that has been unjustly placed upon them by our society, and have sought to bring men into the home and keep them there, even when the men were disruptive, exploitative, and cruel. These women are merely following the dictates of a society which tells them that the home is a better place if a man is present. No home is a good environment to raise children in if parents are not loving. There is a big difference between unloving female headed households and those that are loving. A dysfunctional parent will not create a healthy environment for children. This is as true of the female headed single parent household as it is of the male headed single parent household. It is equally true of the two parent household. Children grow best physically and emotionally in homes where they are loved. Clearly, a poor, isolated single female who is not yet emotionally mature, who has not yet known love, who does not know how to give love to herself and others, will not parent well. Her emotional dysfunctions impede her own growth and make her unable to aid others in their growth. More often than not, young single black females who do not choose pregnancy, but through misfortune, failure to use birth control, failure of birth control method, coercive sex, give birth to children they did not want, will not parent well. If these mothers receive welfare benefits, they are not allowed to get on the job training or experience. As a consequence, they may remain caught in a protracted adolescence where they spend the day watching television or doing nothing. They are prime targets for depression and addiction. Their failure to parent well, to create a healthy home environment, is caused neither by their being single nor by their economic status. It is a reflection of their lack of self development and self actualization. Raised in the midst of dysfunction, their children often do not learn the necessary skills to grow and prosper in this society. Hence, a generational cycle of dysfunction is put in place. This is clearly a problem. It will not be solved by simply adding a man into the mix, even if that were possible, which it is not. For demographics, partnering choices, sexual preferences, incarceration make this an unrealistic expectation. Critics of black single mothers insult the intelligence of families when they suggest that the problem in dysfunctional homes can be solved by men assuming control or simply by putting an adult male in the home. Usually, the attack on single mothers who receive welfare is aimed solely at strengthening the position of those political and economic parties that wish to end state aid. While most women, particularly those who have received welfare benefits, understand the need for welfare reform, they also know the importance of having state aid in a society where severe unemployment problems and in a society with severe unemployment problems and no affordable health care. The primary benefits of welfare have been housing and health care. While the monetary assistance women receive is vital to their survival, it is a pittance compared to the amount that is actually needed for baseline maintenance of a household. I always think that the men who speak so eloquently against welfare, many of whom have children that they do not parent, even if they contribute economically, should have to maintain a household for a month on state aid while being caregivers. Despite the reality of child abuse in all families, irrespective of class, and especially in dysfunctional, poor, and utterly destitute families, it is remarkable that children do not die from the sheer misery and hardship they are forced to endure. If Black leaders, mostly male, continue to ignore the valuable contributions to the stability of Black family life made by caring single mothers, they will undermine and ultimately destroy the valuable and essential contributions single mothers make as they strive to create healthy homes for themselves and their children. Obviously, given the odds against them, many single mothers give adequate care but are unable to fully create an ideal home life. All praises due working single Black mothers and their comrades receiving state aid who manage, in the face of adversity and circumstances they cannot change, to create loving home environments. They need to be given grants to write the guides for their dysfunctional counterparts and for everyone parenting under circumstances that are not ideal. These women are seers with wisdom to share with our communities and the nation about the nature of love, unrecognized and unappreciated. They do the work of loving every day.